Oh my god. Okay, these are extra, but extra can be fun. They're ridiculous. They're so ridiculous. But like, they're a vibe. Alright, sorry about that. I just needed someone to know. I needed someone to know that I bought these. So, hello. I was gonna do a reading wrap up every month, and I just haven't done it. And I don't know why I felt like I haven't been reading. It's March and I'm at 17 books, which is 3 books ahead of my 75 book reading goal. 2023 reading challenges video, I mentioned that I was going to try to read 100 books again this year. Within the first couple weeks, I was already feeling so anxious and stressed about that number. I'm still hoping for 100, but if I don't make it, it's fine. It's just a number. This year, I really wanted to try to do less rereads, more physical TBR kind of books. So I've been trying to do that in the past couple months too. I also haven't been doing monthly wrap-up. My last video where I talked about books I read recently was my 2022 tier ranking. And so we're gonna go through all the books right now. We're in March. We're just gonna go through all the books that I read in January, February, and the beginning of March. Okay? Sound good? We're gonna try to do mellow. Also, but this is a vibe because like I'm wearing these heels and I'm feeling great. And you can't even see them. You can't even see them, but they're here. Look at, they're here. I'm still wearing them. Okay. So first 3 books I read were City of Fallen Angels, City of Lost Souls, and City of Heavenly Fire. And I'm so glad that I reread this series, but I'm also so glad the series is finally over with. The Moral Instruments is not a favorite of mine, and I love the Shadowhunters dearly. I was trying to reread all of the books before Chain of Thorns came out, and I didn't get through the Lady Midnight series, but I did get through all the books before that. The Moral Instruments is, if you don't know, it starts with City of Bones, and that is like the very, very, very first Shadowhunter books there is. I don't recommend you start with City of Bones, actually. I actually recommend you start with Clockwork Angel. I'm gonna have a whole Shadowhunters reading order video come out someday. I don't know when, but I'll do it someday. The Moral Instruments is good-ish, but like, start with the Infernal Devices. That's just what I'm gonna say. These 3 books I enjoyed more than the first 3 books of the Moral Instruments, but I don't know, the incest plot just isn't for me, okay? It's not for me. I hate it. It makes me feel gross. I hate it. I'm so glad I'm finally done. The one thing I love about this series is purely Magnus and Alec. I love their relationship. I love them. Yes, those were the first 3 books I read of the year. I finished The Moral Instruments. Finally, I did it. My Moral Instruments reread is done. Next, I read a book for a book club, and I don't own the physical edition. It is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is for my family book club I'm part of. This book was not for me. I'm just gonna say that. I gave it 1 star. That kind of writing style I just despise. It pulls me out of the story. It's a lot of like he said, she said kind of writing, and I'm just not that fan of that. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Not for me. The writing wasn't my favorite, though if you like that kind of writing style, maybe you'll really love it. I liked the idea of this book. Going to this book, I was really excited to read it, and then the writing kept throwing me off and made me so mad at the book that I ended up giving it 1 star. So next, another book I don't own, but I had it on my Audible library for a long time, so I was like, I'll finally listen to it. I had the second one as well, and now I'm regretting buying them both at the same time. That was Paper Princess by Aaron Watt. I didn't own this book physically. I gave this book a star. 1 star. I'm so upset about the second book. Let me just tell you that. My review says, why oh why do I continue to trust Book Talk? I honestly just felt bad for the main girl. Everyone was a prick. Which, honestly, true. This book was weird to me because I went in thinking it was a romance, like a new adult romance, royalty kind of thing, because that's the vibe I get from it. It's called Paper Princess. And it just ended up being this weird situation where an underage girl was stripping for money. It's like a legitimate job, but like she was 16, which kind of felt gross because she was a minor, and she moves into this house full of all these really attractive guys, which one of them isn't a minor, but like a bunch of them are. This book made me feel gross. It was a lot of like typical high school bullying kind of situation. Like they called her like a slut all the time. This girl was so alone and everybody was calling her names all the time and like using her, and like she ends up having a relationship with a guy who's 18 or 19, I think, who's not a minor, but she is a minor, and there's like explicit sex scenes, and I felt gross, and I was gonna continue on with it because I had the second book, and so I started listening to the second book, and I was just like, no, I can't do this. I can't. It's not good. I think I made a comment about it when I first started reading it on Instagram, and it was like, it was something about her dad being her sperm donor or something, and she said it like 3 times within the first page, and she was like, he's nothing but a sperm donor, he's nothing but my sperm donor daddy, and I was just like, I should have stopped there, but I already had bought the book, and I can't return it on Audible, so it was a waste of 2 credits that I have for these 2 books that I never want to read again. I'm honestly probably never gonna read this author again either. Next book I read was Chain of Thorns, and I have a whole reading vlog if you're interested in my whole experience while reading this book. It was a time. I rated it 5 stars, but to be honest, it's probably more of a 3-star, that like now more I think about it. I'm rating it 5 stars purely because I have a really big emotional connection to the characters and the story, but like overall, I was kind of disappointed with this finale, which surprised me because Cassandra Clare does finales really well. Like, I've never been disappointed with one of her finales before, so it was like a whole new experience of hating her last book in her series. Not hating, but it's weird. It's, unless you've read it, I have a whole reading vlog if you want to see my experience with that one, but I was disappointed. Let me just say that. Probably my least favorite Cassandra Clare ending to a series, which is sad because the first 2 books are probably my favorite, some of my favorites of her books. Here it is. I did annotate it, and, well, half of it. If you want an explanation to that, go watch the video. It did make me cry though, because I really am connected to these characters, and I still really love these characters. I just refuse to believe some of the things that she did for the ending of this book. So overall, kind of disappointed. Still liked it, still recommend the series, like still recommend the trilogy. Not in order, but all by the same author, so I'm going to talk about Shakespeare next. I don't own these physically, but I read 3 Shakespeare books. I read King Henry V, 8th, I don't know what it is, Part 1, Hamlet, and Richard III. I actually enjoy reading Shakespeare, and I'm not just saying that. First one, the King Henry one, Part 1, I rated 2 stars. It's probably my least favorite Shakespeare I have ever read. I was mostly just confused for most of it, and I'm gonna say that's probably because it was my first time reading Shakespeare in years, and I was not used to reading Shakespeare again, and the whole time I was just like, I don't know what I'm reading. Honestly, it's probably closer to a 1 star. I don't remember anything from that, and I just read it. Richard III was fun, okay? I gave this one 3 stars. This one was a whole mood, okay? Shakespeare is wild. God. The one that comes to mind is he's wooing this girl after he's killed both her husband and her father, and they're literally at like her father's funeral, and he's just like, listen, I killed them both for you because you're just so pretty, and I love you, and I want you to marry me. And she's like, no, like, what the hell? Go away, you just killed them. Never gonna happen, I'm never gonna marry you, I'd rather, like, die before I marry you. And then he's just like, but you're so pretty, and she's just like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll think about it. It's just such a ridiculous, that whole moment I was just like, excuse me, what is happening here? I love those moments in Shakespeare because they're just so dramatically insane. And then I reread Hamlet. And Hamlet is also a time. I don't know what to say about Hamlet. I feel like Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet are like his top, Shakespeare's top. Like, you've probably read them, you probably were forced to read Hamlet. I also enjoy Hamlet because of how insane it is too, like him going mad, him flirting with Ophelia to the point of, we're at a different point of view that I didn't even realize, and that's why everything is so confusing right now. And I was reading other reviews about it too, people who read the audiobook, and they were like, I was so confused. And so it was like a general thing among the audiobook that people are just confused when they listen to the audiobook because you can't tell when the POV changes. The Orchard Throne is a new adult romance, and it's about a queen who has her whole life stayed pure to marry this king who she really doesn't want to marry because he's like this dictator kind of king person, and so she's like been trying to be like, oh, not yet, my love, oh, not yet. And then one day this dude comes in and like completely throws everything apart, like just messes everything up. All of her plans have been messed up, and so she has to change her plans. There is a lot of descriptions of, it's a fantasy, so there's a lot of descriptions of her hair and makeup and clothing. Like, all of the descriptions are hair, makeup, and clothing, which usually I don't mind because I love like picturing a dress. I love fashion and hair and makeup, but sometimes you just overdo it a little bit, and I feel like every other paragraph when we were talking about her was about how she looked, what outfit she wearing, what was the color of her eyes or her like hair, or you know, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of it was really slow. It wasn't horrible. If you like those slow burn fantasy books, I think you would like it. I also read the second one, and the second one I rated 1 star. Oh god, now I'm remembering. I was like, the second one I think I liked more, but there's a reason I didn't continue on, and now I'm remembering. So the second one felt like nothing happened the whole time. It was so boring the whole time. Nothing was happening, nothing was going on. The main guy, and it was making me furious. Like, he was so toxic, and I was just like, why? Why? Stop, stop, stop. Like, the whole time, every time we were in his point of view, I was just like, stop. What are you doing? Stop. Really? Then I chose not to continue on with the series. So take that with what you will. Maybe, I don't know, if you like, maybe, would I recommend this? Probably not. Actually, now that I think about it. The first one's okay. The second one made me furious. Furious, angry, I don't know, the guy is a prick. My first 2 books that were actually on my physical TBR, which was Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After. I've been wanting to read these for a while, but I've been waiting to reread Caraval because I didn't remember what happened in Caraval, and I was going into these thinking it was a prequel to Caraval. It is not. This happens right after the end of the 3rd book in Caraval. I listened to these via audiobook, and I love the audiobook narrator. It's the same girl who does the Lunar Chronicles. Rebecca Soler is her name, and she's like one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I rated the first one 3 stars. I rated the second one 4 stars. I like the second one more. I was expecting there to be more Jax because going into the series, all I knew about it was the main character from the previous series. Jax. I'm explaining this really poorly. Jax is a guy in the Caraval universe who I really loved, and I was hearing that this was his duology, this was a story about him, and so I was really excited to go into it, and I was kind of disappointed because there's not, honestly, a lot of Jax in the first book. It's a lot of the main girl character, and I'm not a fan of her, Stephanie Garber's female characters for some reason. I just don't like them. I like Evangeline a little bit better than Scarlet and Tella from her previous series, so I think that's why I enjoyed these 2 books more. I will be continuing on with the 3rd book when it comes out. If I remember what happens. I have a Stephanie Garber curse of remembrance because I don't ever remember what happens in her series. I really enjoyed these. I recommend these. I see why they're hyped up on Bookstagram. Yeah, they're fun. They're like a fantastical, whimsy, fairy tale kind of feel, and I like that. It deals a lot with curses. Her writing and description style is a lot of fun to read. Now I have 3 books left to talk about. Let's talk about these books. I've talked about this recently a lot on my YouTube for some reason. It just keeps coming up. I've been thinking, and I got in this slump, and I was like, I need to read more physical TBR books, and then I ended up listening to the audiobook of Ruby Red. This was a trilogy I read back in like 2014, maybe even 2013, like very early on in reading, and this was, I think, the first series where I binged it all in one day. I read all 3 of these books in one day when I first read this trilogy, and that was like so mind-blowing to me. They're really short though. I still love them, okay? I gave them 4s across the board. First they were 5 because when I first read them I adored them. I still adore them. The movies they're not great. I watched them, they went way off. Ruby Red, I guess, was really popular in like 2010 booktube era. It's about a girl named Gwen who has this time traveler gene, though her whole life her cousin was prepared for it instead of her because they all assumed her cousin had it, and so she just starts time traveling without like any preparation or like being able to really understand what's going on. And so this whole society is like, well, now we gotta train you on how to time travel, and she works with another time traveler named Gideon, who I adore, and it's their time traveling journey across these 3 books, which take place within like a week of each other, which the first time I had some issues with it. The second time I read it, I'm trying to keep in my mind that this was written a while ago, and when like you can tell the word fat is used as a negative or an insult a lot in this book. There is a lot of like toxic body image stuff in this book, which I don't think I realized the first time I read it, and I don't think a lot of people talked about the first time they read it because that was just the normal in 2010. I remember people like that being like the toxic eating kind of situation. It still kind of is today. Like, people are so scared of the word fat or being fat, and I think it's getting better now with like plus size models. People are more acceptable of plus size people today. I'm not saying this right, but not as toxic anymore to not be a size 0 or 2. I don't know. There was a lot of like weird skinny fat phobia stuff fat phobic stuff in here, which I didn't realize the first time I read it, but the second time I'm reading it, I'm like, every time she was describing a character who was negative or bad, it was always like, he's fat. Like, it was always like the first thing she noticed about people is whether they were skinny or they were fat. And there was a lot of talk of like her cousin being like, are you sure you should be eating that? Even girls at school were like, here, eat this. Oh, so it's true? You don't have an eating disorder? I thought you did. And like stupid stuff like that are in here. Other than that, still love this. And I don't think I realized it, and I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt because it was written in German, so maybe there was a translation thing. From what I remember of being in 2010, I remember a lot of toxic diet culture, so it could just be the time. I'm really trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. I've been recommending this, and when I recommend it, because I still recommend you read it, it's a fun time. I just can't recommend it without giving you a warning that there is some toxic diet culture in this book. Also, it's very insta-love. It is so insta-love, and the first time I read this, I didn't realize it because, like, it happens in the second and third book. The second and third book are only, like, a week after the first book, so, like, it's very quick to love. It's a really bingeable, like, really easy series to binge. Again, I read these within 3 days this time. Like, I read a book a day. But yeah, warnings for the toxic diet culture and the insta-love. Because that's it. That's all the books I've read. I've read 17 books so far this year. I don't go into a lot of detail when I talk about books because I just don't want to spoil it. Like, I don't want to accidentally spoil something for people. But yeah, these are the books I've read recently, and I hope you enjoyed. I'm obsessed with these boots because look at them. Look at them. They're so cute. I'm just obsessed. I keep going back to the boots. Thank you so much for watching, and I will try to wrangle some cat content for you. I'm just obsessed with these. Them. I love them. I love them so much.